welcome to Starter Set Saturday, and this is one of the videos where I take one of the starter sets down from my shelf and go through the contents of the box, and then we'll go through all the PDFs and have a look at the rules. But essentially, I make it as spoiler-free as possible. So there will be some mild spoilers in here, but what I mean by that is the plan is to not, like when I do my normal reviews, go through the adventure. I won't be spoiling the adventure. So it does mean both players and game masters or lore masters can be involved in this. And if you're aware of what a lore master means, yes, that means I'm going to be looking at the One Ring's latest starter set, which is called Overhill and Underhill. So let's not beat around the bush. Let's just get into the box. Let's see what's in here. So here we've got the amazing front cover. And I'd say the one thing I do find with these Free League starter sets is, well, value for money for one. I'm not going to sort of put links of where you can pick these up because it's really up to you as to where you go and buy it. But I think in the UK, I think this cost me about 20. I think it's £21, where the dice themselves about £15. So you're basically getting the dice and then a chunk of other things in the box included, almost for free. So we've got some standees, well, some standee stands here. Get rid of that, don't need that. Obligatory catalogue for Free League. And then we've got this is the worst thing I think about their boxes, is they make them stupidly tight. So it's quite difficult to actually get everything out. So we have got, so initially, we're going to be looking at where getting started. This is going to talk to you about, someone's going to be a lore master or the games master in here. And they're going to learn the rules and the adventure. We're not going to go through the adventure today, but I'll touch on, probably give you an idea of what the adventure covers. And the main reason I don't want to spoil it is because I'm playing this adventure very soon. So I especially don't want to know what's going on. We've then got a rule book here, the adventure book. Right, what else have we got coming up? Oh, player character sheets, obviously. That's better, isn't it? So, Gira, I think. Daughter of Guta. Then got Regin Iron Fist, looks like a dwarf. Fimbethrin, I don't know, of the Havens, which is obviously some sort of elf here. Menthilla, a hobbit. And then we've got a human, a dun here. The eagle knows a letter, which will get the adventurers started. We've then got a map of Eriador, which we can look at better on PDF. But more importantly, in this edition, they have changed what they do. So with the first starter set, we had a little sort of cards and stuff. But what this is going to do now is we've got this playmat for all the players to pick and easily get all their stances. Because in the first starter set, not all the stances were available. So this has got all 4 stances, which is quite cool. So rearward, defensive, open, forward, and then foes standing back. So that's quite cool in there. And then finally, these are never going to come out. These are really difficult to come out. There we go. We have a 2-page, well, front and rear standees with names on. So this is quite cool. I know that is a little bit spoily. There's going to be some wargs in here and some, looks like goblins, but so this hardly fits back in the box. It's a little bit tight, but there's so as you can see, there's a lot of stuff in here. 5 character sheets. Importantly, the dice. You don't need the dice. One of the big things people always say with pre-bought dice is, do you need them? But one of the advantages of the Free League dice for the One Ring, so the system itself uses D12 and a D6, but your score is going to go from 1 to 10. So as you can see here, it goes from 1 to 10. You then get a Eye of Sauron, which is the 11. And then you've got a Gandalf symbol, which is a 12. Okay, so we've got 2 of those because occasionally you're going to get to roll favoured or ill-favoured. We will talk about the rules when I get into the PDFs that are included and how that works. And then we've also got a load of D6 in here, and we'll see on the 6 we've got this additional symbol here because that is going to allow you to do better successes, which It's going to pull off some really cool things, special attacks and a variety of other stuff. We've also noticed that the 1, 2, and 3 are written slightly different to the 4, 5, and 6. And that's because if you ever get the weary effect and you roll a 1, 2, or 3, we're not going to count it. But in essence, you're going to be rolling a d12 and hopefully a couple of d6. And then you're going to just add them together. So we've got 9, 12, 9, 12. What can I add up? 15. You know, your brain just stops counting. You've only got to add 3 numbers up. 15. Actually, 15's a good average number. There's a lot of the times that's going to succeed. So, right, I think we should probably now get into the PDFs and I'll show you exactly what is included in a bit more detail. So here we can see the beautiful map of Eriador, which... So the first adventure was set almost exclusively in and around the Shire, so it's quite nice now that it looks like maybe we're going to be travelling around a little bit more in this adventure. It would be nice to go and see a few more areas. The other thing I did notice, and this isn't a slur on the first start set, is the fact that we've got more races than just, I think they're all hobbits and 1 dwarf. That's what I seem to remember, which obviously led to the fight over who was going to be Gimli for the one session. On the back of this, we've then got the combat map, and as you can see, so we've got sort of rear. This game is stances, and I think it's one of those things that if you are sort of used to a Dungeons and Dragons, you might find stances a little bit weird, but I'll get into that when we get into combat. Because I like what it does. I like the fact tactical options that sort of feel a little bit more. Say it's very different on how it works. So you don't have to worry about movement and stuff during combat. So we'll show you that when we get there. And we'll obviously then get this getting started, which was the first page, which is it's just a 1-page handout here, advertising obviously some books to go and buy. If you're going to want to pick up one of these, obviously you're going to want the core rule book beyond this, but more importantly, go and get the Moria book. I need to cover and review the Moria book. That will be coming over the next few weeks because the Moria book is utterly amazing. Okay, so character sheets. I think it's a Guerrera, I kind of said. So character sheets are going to be front and back. So here you can see a little bit of information about her. You're not determined to live long in the shadow of your ancestors' deeds, but you'll have your name to be featured in the songs of children will sing. So this will be the purpose that you have chosen to cross the misty mountains into Eriador. This is where your own saga will be written. Character sheets are really simple. In essence, you've got a few sort of keywords here. Call in, which is class, culture, and cultural blessing. Here is race. Okay, and all the players are going to have a patron, and that's the sort of person that sets up the adventure. It maybe think people in the core rule book that will be for like Gandalf, so it's going to pull on some big, Lord of the Rings characters. 3 attributes only in the game: strength, heart, and wit. And in essence, you know the TN, target number, for all of your rolls. So if it's anything to do with strength or the skills below it, your target number is 15. So you'll have your D12 and potentially some additional D6. So if you're going hunting, you would have 2D6 because you've got 2 dots in hunting, and roll your 12, add them together, try to get 15 or more, and you've succeeded. And the other 2 attributes then we've got are heart and wit. So I'll explain this fully once we get into the main part of the rule book that actually comes in there. I think it's only about 22 pages, so it's nice and quick for people to get into the game. Key thing to pay attention to here is endurance. So this endurance is 27. That's your hit points or wounds. But load is how much you're carrying reduces your endurance. So technically, this character here only actually has 11. Fatigue will affect this. We'll talk about this as we get into the core rule book. So here's a little bit more detail. So here we've got the dwarf as well. Again, I don't want to kind of spoil too much information in here. I just kind of wanted to explain the character sheet here. We've got this hobbit 18. That means the hobbit's pretty weak, but good of heart and good wits. Eagle Nose is the Kingdom of Men. That was a human here. So those are the races. Nice that they have got, I say, the first edition, well, not the first edition, the first starter set, just predominantly hobbits. When the players are doing the travel, this is what they're going to be using to work out travel time, how far they go. Again, I will explain this. And one thing you'll notice as we go through the core rule book, which we're just about to do now, is just how important nearly all of the skills are in the game. It's one of those games where you're really going to need a wide spread of skills. You don't want 3 or 4 players that are just focused on combat, because you're not going to be able to travel and you're not going to be able to do all the council stuff, which means the party needs to be, well, you're a party. You are paying like playing like a fellowship. You are being put together for good and heroic reasons. So it's actually 28 pages of the rulebook. I'm going to take you through the rules so we get a good understanding on how this works. And you'll see as we go through just how beautiful this second edition of the One Ring actually is. So this is one of my favourite all-time games. Absolutely love this. I had a lot of the first edition, played it to death, played a lot of the second edition. And so really looking forward. Well, I've ran a lot of second edition. Really looking forward to actually getting to play this. So hence the reason. Well, I like to keep these as spoiler-free as possible. But we're set. The game, if you've never played it, this is a good leaping off point, but it's set between the Battle of Five Armies and Frodo getting the ring. So it's I think it's about 20 years to 30 years after the Battle of Five Armies, and about 30 years it's sort of sat right in that middle point of the Third Age. Get an example of play here on how it works. Make sure you read it. But the players, as I said, they're heroes. The whole idea is the players. This is a full-on heroic game. They will be doing larger than life things, and the battles and the council allow for that to happen. The games master is the lore master who's going to be running it. And say the game is then set into sessions. This is how it deals with it. So each session, be it a combat session, a council session, or the adventuring session, so the travel session, you'll have a bit of an introduction. You'll then have the scenes and then end sessions. It kind of wants you to have sessions every 2 or 3, sort of close it down and have an end session for experience when you're running the main game every 2 or 3 sort of sessions, if that makes sense, to give the players experience, chance to heal things like shadow and stuff like that, which is the corruption in the world. But when you're going to play a scene, you'll frame the scene, you'll allow the players to react, and then you'll do the resolution of the scene in here. One thing you get with, I think, every starter set I've ever read, you don't need to worry about character creation. So hence the reason, pre-generated characters, so we don't really need to worry about why things do what they do. All you need to worry about is how things work. So all of the characters in here will have a culture and calling, race, and class, effectively, and each of the cultures will have some blessings. There'll be some special abilities, and then we've got 3 attributes here. We've got strength, which is as you'd imagine, your toughness and how fit you are, your heart, which measures your capacity for emotions, enthusiasm, and then finally we've got wit, which is basically how clever or ingenious you are. There's a few other things that your strength will do, and that's basically around combat. So that there's a lot of the sort of attacking rolls are based on strength. Heart is used in conjunction with valor rolls. We'll discuss that in a little bit, as wit does wisdom, as well as all 3 of those attributes basically relying on the skills underneath them. When we looked at that character sheet, all of the players will have some distinctive feature. If you can get that feature into a skill check, it's going to give you an additional d6 to roll, therefore passing easier. The game itself has got a total of 18 skills, and say if you've got pips in each pip, it's just going to allow you to roll an additional die for each of the pip. Some of your skills also might be favoured, and if they are, you're going to get to roll that skill as favoured. You're going to get to roll 2d12 and pick the higher. So think advantage if you're aware of Dungeons and Dragons. Most of the players will also then have weapon proficiencies, be it axe, bows, spears, or swords. Game doesn't really worry about sort of gear other than armor, shields, helmets, and sort of what you're carrying. But as we sort of showed on the character sheet, you need to be aware of how much you're actually carrying, because the more you're carrying, the more it affects your load. The higher the load, the less actual endurance you've got. Well, valor and wisdom are things that are going to increase over time. This is sort of how brave you become, how well known you are and renowned. This really isn't going to have much of an effect. I should have said this. Some of the rules in here will be expanded on in the core rulebook. Okay, so that this is a little bit more sort of streamlined. One thing you got to think about is focus as well with your fellowship. So there'll be a member of the fellowship that you basically you're really good friends with, your buddies, or you've got a good backstory, which means you're going to gain focus when you're doing stuff to help them, so additional dice. Problem is, when they become injured, you then are going to start suffering because they're suffering as well. Resolution. So when are you going to roll a dice? When there's a chance, like most role-playing games, if there's a chance of failure, a bunch of dice are going to be rolled. You're always going to roll a d12 or 2, depending whether you've got favour or ill favour. Favour, roll 2d12, pick the higher. Ill-favoured, roll 2d12, pick the lower. And there'll be certain situations that are going to allow that. You will then want a bunch of d6. So whether you've got skills in it, whether players are helping you with the roll, or whether you've got equipment, or whether you can put your feature in, will determine if you can get more d6. The more d6 you get in your dice pool, so you're going to be adding that to your d12, and then you add them together and you're trying to beat your TN. And your TN you know before you roll, because it's one of the 3 that's on your character sheet. Another thing that this game does is, so when you roll a Gandalf, you consider a success. So if you, regardless of whether you get a 1 in 12 chance of always getting a critical, which is with a Gandalf, and it'll be a success. In the core rule book, if you roll a Sauron, bad things happen. In this, it just counts as 0. Okay, so it's nice and simple just to ease people in. So the main rule book is a little bit more complicated than this, but I do like, and they did this with the first starter set as well, I do like the fact that they've done this. But this little table here is really important. Don't worry, there's like a little Games Master page together right at the back of this book. But on the d6, so you say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they're always going to count as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, unless you are weary, in which case the 1, 2, and 3 count as 0, and your 6 will always give you an additional success, which is what we talk here about degrees of successes. So if you roll a natural 6 on it, you get to use the 6 to add that, but also you may do the, whatever skill check you're doing, you might be able to do it quicker, faster, cheaper, stealthier, whatever it may be. When it comes to combat, you're going to take those 6s and those special abilities to do additional things like piercing damage, which again we'll come on to. We've already discussed favoured and ill-favoured in here. And the bonus dice here is what we're saying about how you can gain additional dice or d6 into the roll. So things like inspiration, having using your distinctive feature and ear support from the other players, the fellowship focus. So if together it's the drive of your focus, you can allow that will, again, will give you another d6. And then you've got the dice roll summary procedure down here. We've got 3 conditions in this set. So we've got miserable, and that's going to be when your shadow rating matches or exceeds your current hope. Whenever you roll the Sauron, you're automatically going to fail. Okay, so think about it in this rule. On the d12 normally, if you roll the Sauron, it counts as 0. So if you've got enough d6, you could still pass that roll. Okay, but if you are miserable, you're always going to fail. Okay, so it's basically like a crit fumble, if that makes sense. Well, a fumble, not a crit fumble, but you get what I mean. So weary is when your endurance drops below the level of the load. So as you're going to take wounds, you will then basically, any 1, 2s, or 3s aren't counted. And then the final condition you're going to get is wounded. And when you become wounded, that's when your endurance is 0. You're going to do you're going to roll to see just how badly wounded you are. But one thing you can do, obviously, if you're carrying a lot of equipment and your endurance is dropping, well, you can actually just drop equipment during combat or as traveling, get rid of the treasure and actually reduce your load, which then might put your endurance back above your load so you can carry on acting. It has this really good sort of balancing idea of, because, you can't go around carrying too much. Everyone likes the idea of, 2 swords, full armor, helmet, shield, whatever it may be, but walk around like that all day, it's going to be tiring, it's going to be exhausting, and this game replicates that really, really well. Getting back some of your conditions is normally from resting, so either short or sort of like a prolonged rest of a day. Shadow represents the corruption in the world, and it's unavoidable, unfortunately. And when the players are either hit by something with shadow, or they see it, or they interact with it, depending on whether it is sort of like physical or mental shadow, will determine whether they're rolling against their heart, for valor rolls or wits for a wisdom roll. If they fail that roll, they're then going to take some misdeeds, so they can start gaining shadow points. You can heal shadow points, and it's very simplified in this, the starter set. You just basically take a short-term bout of madness, and then you describe to the lore master exactly what you're going to do, and it's going to be something that your character should regret, or items you should lose, or you're going to make a council meeting go really badly, and then you are healed from it. But it should be something that has a sort of not game-breaking issues, but something that should affect a scene. Now, combat is the bit that I think players coming from 5th edition, or those sort of, where you actually get to move around, will have the biggest issue with, because it just goes easy like this. You've got 2 stages, and one of them you only get to do once. When combat starts, you can do opening volley. That means anyone with a bow can shoot anyone else. There's no initiative yet. That hasn't happened. Everyone's shooting in to do an attack roll. We then basically go into melee combat-ish, because there is an element, maybe, of people standing at the back with bows. But the first thing they're then going to do is everyone's going to pick their stance. Remember that circle? So you're going to decide where you are. You're either going to go forward, which is an aggressive stand. You're going to go open, which is a middling stand. I'll explain it in a second. Defensive, standing back, defensive, or rearward, if there's enough people in front of you. So each of the stances are going to allow you to either add or subtract a certain amount of die, and they're also then going to give you a special ability that is related to a skill. Stance is the aggressive stand. That basically means every time you do an attack roll, you're going to add 1d. You can add 1d6. Downside is everyone that's trying to attack you is going to add 1 dice to hit you. The open stance, you're also then going to get to do the intimidation skill. We then get the open one. It doesn't affect any dice rolls at all, and that's going to give the rally skill. The defensive stand, anyone attacking you is going to take 1 dice off their attack, but you're going to attack with 1 less die, and then you can do the protect companion. Rearward, this means you can stand at the back. It's the only chance that you get to use bows in this, and you can shoot anybody. And with that one, you can do the prepared shot round, which is, it's like a sort of snipe. So you can give up a round to gain some additional dice in here. So once you've done your stance, we'll then get into engagement. Engagement is attacking. And all the players go first, and we go from forward, open, defensive, rearward. So once all the attacks have been done, you can then go into the player hero actions. And this is going to allow you, again, we go in order from forward all the way to the rear stance, to allow them to do any of the skill checks. So forward stance, again, intimidate the foes. The open stance, rally. Defensive stance, protection. And the rear stance is prepare. And each of these will have a different skill check. So if you want to do intimidation, it's going to be an or skill check. If you want to do rally and hearten. If you want to do protection, you roll in athletics. If you want to do the prepare shot, you'll scan. Then, once all that's done, the adversaries go. So it's the NPCs go. And again, they go in order from all the forward people all the way to the back. So one thing to remember, if you are going to be in the backward stance, what you need to do, there are a certain amount of rules where if they outnumber you, you can't go to rear. You have to equal or outnumber the opponents, because then that means you step out of the front line, so you can actually withdraw to actually shoot your bow. Once all that's done, we'll then start a new round, and then we can keep going. We've got a few things about, if the players want to run or brawling and things like that, but I'll let you sort of discover that in your own terms. See whether you've hit or not, you're basically going to roll against your strength target number, and that's going to be modified by the parry rating of the enemy that's attacking. And if you do manage to hit them, so that's equal or more than your strength target number, you'll do damage equal to the weapon damage. Remember, if there's any 6s in there, you're going to be able to sort of use those 6s to do additional things. So here we've got the special damage, so you may be able to do a heavy blow, fend off, or a piercing if it's bows or swords. So the one thing that armor does in this game is armor doesn't affect how hard it is to be hit, because that's going to go against your parry. What it will do is, if you're wearing certain types of armor, they won't be able to do the heavy blow, or they wouldn't be able to do the piercing attack, which then makes combat quite interesting, because as I was saying about the endurance versus load issues, that as you take damage, you might start taking armor off or dropping shields, because you are you're going to basically be under, so you're going to become weary, and then you can't use the 1s, 2, or 3s on your dice, which means then, so you're going to get rid of your shield, and then suddenly you're going to be more open to taking things like piercing damage. So it makes it really, really interesting on how it works. If you ever go to 0 hit points or 0 endurance, you'll then roll on this wound severity table. Then just over the page, it's got a good example on how the combat works. So council, which we've sort of talked about combat and open play. So the second sort of scene type you're going to get is council. Now this tends to happen either at the start, middle, or end of a session, and this is where you are negotiating with somebody to try and get something that they may or may not want to give you. And it opens up with the players and the games master would sort of set the scene. They'll decide what's going on. So before the council begins, the players should all agree on what the company is hoping to achieve by this meeting. You will then nominate somebody in the party, and they're going to want to have a high skill roll in or courtesy or riddle. Again, see what I mean about you're going to need a certain amount of skills. They will then check against this to see how long you've got to try and convince the person you're talking to in terms of actions and rounds to win them over to your favour. And this is done, I think, like most games, you'll say, like the open-ended checks where you might need 5 successes between you over the next 3 rounds. It's done exactly the same as that. Is their players are looking to achieve a certain amount of things, and the players can tell you how they're going to be doing that. They're going to use the heart skill, insight skill, persuade, riddle, or song to win them over. And then at the end of the council, if they've succeeded or not succeeded, they will either hopefully have got what they want, or they may not got what they want. Potentially, it could even be worse for them. Finally, journey. This is getting there. Because eventually the players are going to have to leave their home or the Shire to go and discover the new areas. And this, again, as you'd imagine, from a game like this, is going to require that all of the players be involved in this. And there are 4 roles. All of the roles need to be fulfilled. So if there are 5 in the party, then something's going to be doubled up. And if there's less than 4 in the party, someone's going to have to do more than 1 role. The only thing that can't have more than 1 role, be rolled twice effectively, is guide. So you'll only ever have 1 guide, but you may have multiple hunters, lookouts, or scouts. Because the guide is the person that's going to roll to see how long, hopefully, the journey will take. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is look at, because the books themselves, they'll have one in the adventure, I'd imagine. It'll be done as hexes, and then there's lots of different colours for the hexes for how dangerous they are, and the sort of, you'll see as we get over the page. So basically what the players will do is decide the journey. So you sort of plot out the journey on where you're going to go. And, you can use this journey path here to sort of help plot it all out. Once they've got that, the guide is going to make a travel roll. So it's important they've got a good travel skill. And this will determine which point the first encounter is going to take place. Now, if they fail that roll, it's going to be 2 hexes away from the journey. If they pass it, it could be 3 hexes away. Or for each 6 they're going to get an additional one. So let's say they're traveling 5 and they pass it with 2 6s. So normally that, it would occur at 3 steps away. So they might actually almost get there without any interactions or any issues. And if they get to the end of it, they all get there, and hopefully, if there's nothing gone wrong, they've got no fatigue. So which means it's not going to affect, because fatigue is added to the load, which then, as you can see, we've got that little thing working against their endurance all the time, going to make them tired. But let's say that you have got something that's going to go on in hex. So how do we work that out? So the first thing we need to do is find out which one of the scout, lookout, or hunter has been the person that's going to be affected, that has potentially got something wrong, attacked, or just not noticed something. So you can roll d6 here. 1 to 2 it'll be the scout, 3 to 4 the lookout, 5 to 6 will be the scout. To find out what event is happening, what actually happens is the Lord Master is going to look at what hex it took place on. So if it's a borderland, he makes a favoured roll, so he's going to roll 2d12. If it's a wildland, 1d12. If it's a dark land, it's ill-favoured, so it's 2d12 and take the lower. And as you can see, we've got things that are going to happen here. So the lower the score, the more the fatigue they're going to take, and the worse points they're going to get. They could end up taking shadow points. They may end up losing an extra day of traveling, which could affect things like food and a variety of other stuff. Or they may be lucky, find a shortcut, or ultimately they may end up getting some hope back. So now we need to get to step 3, which is resolve the event. So to resolve the event, the player hero covering the indicated skill roll will be the person to make the check. So for example, if it's the lookout, they're going to need to make the awareness check. So what we need to do is just see whether they've got any additional dice or lose a dice first. So if it is hard terrain, they're going to lose a d6. But if the event happens on a road, they are going to gain an additional d6. They'll then make their check and obviously try and beat the relevant TN number for that. And whether they succeed or fail will determine on the event's journey table. So if it's a 8 or 9, they're going to need to succeed at the roll to reduce it. And if they fail it, there is no negative effect. But obviously with the mishap, if they succeed with the mishap, that's fine. The mishap doesn't happen. If they fail it, they will get the impact of the failed roll. Regardless of where the roll goes, they will always pick up the fatigue. And then the lore master will basically play some sort of narrative event as to what happened. And see, on the final page here, we've got, say, this is a nice summary page which you can print off straight up, just drop from the PDF. Then get a bunch of standees so we can look at them in a little bit more detail. So it's a little bit spoily so we know what's coming up in the adventure here. We've got a letter handout that I'm going to skip over. And then finally, we've got the adventure, which is 20 pages. I'm going to show you the first page in here because this is as far as I got. Because I kind of wanted to see the layout. And I basically, so we've got 3 parts. Not going to explain any of the adventure, but it does say here each part is designed to take 1 hour of gameplay with the final part twice as long. So it should be 2 hours. So totally you've got about a 4-hour adventure there. So that's everything in the starter set. Once I've played this, I will actually update everyone on my weekly update when I talk about games played. I'd say value for money. It's a 4-hour adventure, which doesn't feel a lot of value for money. But battle map you're going to need going forward for the main game anyway. Because it seems like I actually prefer the battle map in this compared to the cards that they had in the first starter set. The dice, I'd say, practically makes the box free because yes, you can use any dice set, but I don't know. I think we all like having more dice and collecting more dice. Specifically, when you got the Sauron and the Gandalf symbols on here and the little sort of teeth on the on the d6s, it does look better at the table. So now I've got 2 sets. I've got 2 full sets of dice here. So, but yeah, I say it's not essential. Standees, you're going to need those now. That is potentially actually the only potential issue with this new version. But saying that, you could put anything on there if you like. If you play and you eat Smarties. Be careful when the chocolate, the coating melts. But yeah, you could put anything on that map. So as long as you've got somewhere of representing your stance, I think, like from a physical point of view, if you're playing this, because starter sets are designed to be played with people, not on VTTs, it's going to look a lot better on the table. Actually putting down and moving and sliding backwards and forwards for your stances. So I absolutely love this, and I love the rules. D12 is one of my favourite dice anyway, but the fact that it's effectively a D10 plus D6 system. But if you roll an 11, okay, it's not worth anything. Roll a 12, crit. So if you're used to D20 systems, you've got a 1 in 12 chance of getting a crit as opposed to a 1 in 20. So you're going to get crits more often. Some of the reasons why I love Horde Wars Advance is it's so swingy with those D12 crits and stuff. But it really does show off not only the quality of Free Leagues creating and writing these things, but actually just how wonderful Tolkien's world is. And it is such a good adaptation of it. And also, I think the downside is once you've bought this starter set, you're going to want to buy the core rule book, you're going to want to buy Moria, you're going to want to go and get everything. And when you do get into the books and you feel the amazing linen finish on them, it's actually amazing. So I'll update you once I've played this, because I think I'll do the first starter set at some stage as well, which I say I like the adventure. It was just a little bit, it was just all based in the Shire. So, but yeah, it's a different, I'm glad it's different, but it's weird to have a second starter set for a game that's only been around for, I want to say 4 or 5 years possibly, and to do things differently. It's good. It's good. So I'm going to leave it there. If you've enjoyed this video, like, share, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next week for another start set. Thanks for watching.